Guess what I'm covering next?
Rasputin, lover of the Russian queen.
I'm only like a quarter of the way through this book, and it's batshit crazy. What I'm quickly learning is that the last Romanovs and some other aristocrats surrounding them were heavily interested in the occult way before they even knew the name Rasputin. So let's dive in. Grigory Rasputin was born on January 9th, 1869 in the small, desolate village Pokrovskoye, Russia. He was an 8th generation Siberian, which is pretty hardcore, and all 8 of those generations had been in that exact same town the entire time. He was born into a family of peasants, and as far back as we can trace, all of his ancestors were also peasants. But what they weren't was serfs. At the time of Rasputin's birth, Russia still had a feudal-like system called serfdom, where essentially peasants belonged to the land on which they were born. But if a man was brave enough, which Rasputin's 6th great-grandfather Izosim was, he could escape serfdom by running away to Siberia and trying to make a go of it on his own, as serfdom did not really exist east of the Ural Mountains. I talk more about this on the 6th video on this playlist if you're interested. So, Grigory Rasputin was born to peasant parents Yefim and Anna Rasputin. This had been their family surname for 7 generations already, so Rasputin was his God-given name, not some insidious nickname given to him after he became famous. Anna, his mother, gave birth at least 7 times, potentially 8, but Grigory was the only son, potentially the only child, that lived into adulthood. Grigory had either a cousin or a sister named Feodosia that he was close to growing up and into adulthood, Anna's debated 8th child. So the rumors that Grigory had a brother named Dmitri that he personally drowned when they were boys is completely false. Life in 19th century Siberia was hard, and all of Anna's other children died of various illnesses when they were still children. Though the Rasputins were peasants, they did manage to do okay for themselves. They worked various agricultural odd jobs until Yefim was able to afford a home in their village and acquire a couple dozen cows. The Rasputins had no formal education and were all illiterate, though Grigory did manage to learn some reading skills later in his life. In the late 19th century in Siberia, only 4% of the population was literate, and only 20% of Russia was. After Grigory got famous, endless accounts of how he was born purely evil and had a long history of criminal behavior absolutely flooded Russia. But there is zero record that he had a criminal history of any kind, and the priests/council in his village actually did keep pretty detailed records. He was not a horse thief, a burglar, a vandal of any kind, at least as far as anyone has any proof of. He did, however, partake in copious amounts of alcohol consumption in his youth, and had a particular obsession with women, and these 2 vices would follow him for the rest of his life. Like most other peasants in the area, the Rasputins were members of the Russian Orthodox Church. Grigory himself was named after the 4th century Christian mystic Saint Gregory of Nyssa, and when Grigory was 17 years old, he traveled to a place called Abalak to visit the locally famous site of the holy Znamensky Monastery. Here is where he met Praskovia Dubrovina, a peasant woman 3 years his senior, who would become his wife shortly after his 18th birthday. Praskovia would stay married to Grigory for the rest of his life, even after all of Russia knew his name for rather nefarious reasons. After their wedding, Praskovia moved to the Rasputin family home in their small Siberian village of around 1,000 people. This is where she would give birth to Grigory's 7 children, though only 3 would live to adulthood. But here's the strange part. Grigory spent the first 10 years of their marriage together living a completely normal life. He helped his father earn a living by working small jobs around the area, while Praskovia and his mother raised the children and cared for the home for 10 entirely normal years. Then, one day when he was around 28 years old, as he was out in a field working, Grigory said he had a vision of the Virgin Mary and that she was pointing directly towards the horizon. That night, he slept with an icon of Mary in his hands, and when he woke up, he said he saw tears streaming down her face, then heard a voice calling out to him, saying, "I am weeping for the sins of mankind, Grigory. Go, wander, and cleanse the people of their sins." Whether this actually happened, or if Grigory was simply having a peasant's version of a midlife crisis, we will never truly know. But it was at this point in his life where Grigory began abandoning his family for years at a time to wander around the continent as a poor religious pilgrim. This was not uncommon in 19th century Russia. There were around 1 million religious Russians traveling across the country by by foot by the time Grigory decided to do the same thing, all of them relying on kind strangers to provide them food and shelter along their journey, known as straniki. And here is where things started to get really strange really quickly. In my next video, I'll be covering what exactly Grigory was doing during his pilgrimage, what caused me to annotate this book with the following note, and start to dive into how he became one of the most famous mystics in modern history. I learned all of this in this book, Rasputin by Douglas Smith, and thank you so much for watching.